Alright, Bob Buckley here with another Frontline Disc Golf Form Review. Today we're doing a form review for Marcus Msalvadore, the lefty. We got Dan Brooks-Wells here on the left, Marcus on the right. I'm going to go ahead and break it down. I'm going to go through and play it once through and I'll back it up. I actually had to cut this in half and kind of adjust it a little bit, so I think there's a timing issue, but we'll get to that. So normally I'm able to line it up where even though the forms are completely different, they release the disc at the same time and their X step is at the same time. So I lined their X step up and they're releasing the disc at a different time. So I had to cut it in half and I was able to match it up exactly once I did that. I had to slow the end of Dan's throw down in order to match Marcus's speed. So I think maybe Marcus isn't pulling through super fast or Dan's pulling through too fast, one or the other. Marcus already does have really good form. We'll point that out. This is super nitpicking, all really small stuff, but he wanted me to dive in deep. So my first critique is to get your hand off the disc sooner. As you'll see, as soon as Dan begins his X step, his left hand comes down. Marcus's stays on the disc well into his X step, and whether you believe it or not, that causes the disc to follow your left hand into your reach back. And we already pointed out in our little group chat that Marcus might be rounding just a touch, so that might have something to do with it. I would suggest a slightly smaller X step, taking a big X step. And Marcus doesn't have a huge X step compared to some, but as you'll see here, he lands on his toe, which then turns his hips backwards just a bit. You want your hips to remain perpendicular with your legs and remain pointed at the target. As you can see here with Dan, he has a really small X step. Your right foot, well, I guess it's your left foot. I'm gonna change this. Your left foot almost looks like it's too perpendicular. If you look at Dan's here, it's pointed slightly back. It might be a non-issue, it's just an observation. It might make things a little bit more comfortable when you're coming through with that back foot on your X step. I think Marcus does a better job at walking around the disc and making it levitate than Dan does. As you'll see, like Dan actually uses a reach back. Marcus actually continues forward with his weight and the disc stays in one spot. So like the momentum of Marcus's body moving forward is what causes his reach back. He's not physically reaching back with the disc, which is actually the intended way of like how you're supposed to throw. So I think he does a better job at that than Dan. During your reach back, I think your weight is too far forward. It looks like you're like falling backwards. You'll notice Dan's weight is like centered as he goes into his reach back and he comes forward with that plant foot. Like Dan's back here is like, his weight is still over his back foot. Your weight is already almost over your front foot already. You can see it here, it looks like you're like falling backwards. Whereas Dan is nice, balanced plant. As you're coming back, you guys both have really high reach backs, which it's not that big of an issue as long as you're pulling through at the right Like you see Dan almost has to pull the disc down, whereas Marcus pulls across. Dan is able to get right there. Dan is able to get his elbow out, which gets the disc below his chest, down into that sternum area. And Marcus doesn't really get he almost gets his elbow out. We want to see that elbow, as you can see Dan. And you'll see Marcus is still throwing up at his chest. And right here is a pretty good example of it. You can see Marcus's nose is slightly up, and Dan's is like flat to slightly down. As you can see here, when the disc comes out of Dan's hand, it's like perfectly flat. The other thing I noticed is if I were to draw a line right here where Marcus's head is, as he pulls through, he like stands up and gets taller. So he's popping up like a gopher. You got to drive that weight down and continue with the weight transfer onto that front leg. As you can see, Dan here doesn't really pop up. His head stays at the same level. He doesn't stand up on that right as he releases. The other thing I noticed too that I forgot to write down as a note is watch Marcus's head as he pulls through in comparison to Dan's. The disc is out of Dan's hand before he looks forward. As Marcus is pulling through, he's already looking forward. And that's one thing that Schustrick used to say in his clinics is, you look up too fast to watch a disc go out of bounds. And then his follow through is solid. And you can tell that his hand is still in a fist, so that means that the disc is ripping out of his hand instead of him releasing the disc, which is really good too. So yep, there you go. That's my form review. Hopefully it helps out. See you later.